in the back door there. Yes.
Good morning. Can I ask everyone to go ahead and take your seats? We're getting ready to get started. All right, good morning and welcome to the CRTPO TCC committee meeting. This is September 5th, 2024, and the time is now 10:03. We'll call this meeting to order and get started with introductions around the table, starting to my left.
Tracy Howe, Pedestrian Focus.
Heather Maloney, Town of Huntersville.
Matt Kirkendall, City of Statesville.
Rich Hoffman, Iredell County.
Emily Hines, Village of Wesley Chapel.
Aaron Tucker, Town of Cornelius.
Bjorn Hansen, Union County.
Todd Huntsinger, Town of Indian Trail.
Vicki Brooks, Town of Mineral Springs.
Justin Russell, Town of Stallings.
Andrew Ventresca, Town of Troutman. Travis Johnson, CRTPO.
Liz Babson, City of Charlotte.
Candace Rory, Charlotte Planning.
Mackenzie Nowacki, City of Charlotte General Services.
Brian Horton, Katz, and MTC Rep.
Irene Ivy, Public Health Focus Area.
Neil Paniker, NCDOT Division 12.
Lisa Stywinner, City of Monroe.
James Kelly, Town of Waxhaw.
Andrew Golden, Town of Davidson.
Sheldon Turner, Mecklenburg County Air Quality.
Sean Epperson, NCDOT Division 10.
Dana Stujenki, Town of Matthews.
Steve Fry, Town of Mint Hill.
All right, and we'll move to do introductions in the audience, starting Neil.
Neil Burke, CRTPO. Bob Cook, CRTPO. Andy Penske, Central Line. Matt Matt Hubert, Town of Waxhaw. DOT. Liaison with NCDOT. Corey Williams, CDOT. Martin Kidman, CDOT.
Loretta Farron, Federal Highway Administration. Dr. Courtney Kaufman, Mecklenburg County. Gina Merrill, Mecklenburg County.
Justin Carroll, CDOT.
And Joe Anthony.
Brian Ellsworth, CRTPO.
Heather Stafford, CRTPO.
Will Steiner, CRTPO.
Peter Ballard, CRTPO. Theo Johnson, CRTPO.
Bryson Hacker, City of Russell.
I am Thomas, Public Health Alternate.
We're just CRTPO.
Good day, CRTPO.
Earl Leonard, CRTPO.
Great, thank you, and welcome everyone. Before we get started with our agenda, I'd like to call Bob up for a real quick announcement.
Morning, everyone. I'm happy to be here today with some excellent news. We found out earlier this morning that CRTPO was awarded $3.15 million in Safe Streets for All grant money. This is a follow-up to the RAISE grant, of course, that we received last June. So this is our first application under this program, and it's going to allow us to create a regional safety action plan. And what's really important about these plans is that it will allow all the member jurisdictions to submit proposals for implementation grants based upon our grants. So this is great news for us as an organization, but it's also great news for the entire region because of freeing up that ability, or creating that ability, I should say, for all of you to submit proposals for implementation grants. And I want to mention too that the news doesn't stop with us. This morning, also the town of Huntersville and the village of Marvin found out they also received good news about SS4A. So great news all around for the region. So congratulations to Heather and to the village of Marvin for also getting money under the SS4A. I wanted to mention too, to get into a little bit more about that, the raise issue too. We got $5 million for raise back, I think it was in June. So in total, as an organization, we've received $8.15 million in grant money so far this year. So this is really addressing how we're working to fulfill the strategic plan that we adopted a few years ago to be a more active member throughout the region in terms of transportation and advancing mobility and equity throughout our region. And I really want to wrap up by thanking the folks who were responsible for this. For SS4A, Will was the lead on this. Will Snyder was the lead. And on Raise, it was Brian and Jennifer. And I think Will played a role in that as well. So my thanks to them for all the hard work that they did to get us $8.15 million in grant money. Now we have to figure out how to spend it. And that's going to be the hard part. We have great plans. We have great proposals. We got the money. But this is some new territory for us as an organization, but that's good new territory to be in. So again, my thanks to Will and to Jennifer and to Brian for all their hard work, and congratulations to Huntersville and to Marvin as well. So just wanted to start off with some good news this morning.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing. And on behalf of the TCC members, I will thank you and your team. The CRTPO staff is just amazing in their ability to support all of the jurisdictions in this region. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. May I have a motion to adopt today's agenda? And a second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Moving on to our next item. May I have a motion to adopt today's consent agenda? We have the approval of the August 1st, 2024 TCC minutes, the 2024-2033 TIP amendments, the FY 2025 UPWP amendment, which is the Marshville bypass, and the Union County Transportation TIP amendment. May I have a motion?
Make that motion.
Thank you. And a second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. That carries unanimously. Moving on to our first item of business. This was an item submitted by a couple of our members, so I'll call on them to come forward. We'll hear from Bjorn and Dana on the I-77 South managed lanes and role of the TCC.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Bjorn Hansen with Union County. Dana Stujenki with the town of Matthews is here to also present on this topic. This is something that we submitted for the agenda this month in light of the discussions in July and August with the CARPO board regarding the TCCs, or I'm sorry, not TCCs, the board's discussion about the I-77 South Managed Lanes project. This is a huge project and will involve interstate traffic and the spending of billions of dollars in some combination of tolls and state funds. We initially received the presentation, the announcement a couple of years ago about the unsolicited proposal for a P3 to implement it. And then it was presented to the board where it has stayed since then. And the board potentially in September, possibly in October, will be asked to decide between a P3 and NCDOT delivered project with future decisions on the project, more specific details and implementation of it. And, talking with our board members, and they're asking us questions, and our inability to provide them fundamental answers to their questions about the project and the proposal, we don't think it's good precedent, and we don't think it should be continued on this project or on other projects moving forward. Now Dana's going to talk about a little bit the role of TCC, which hopefully will put this into perspective.
Good morning, everyone. I'm a little small over the screen, so I'm gonna stand in the corner. Okay, so thanks for hearing this item. It's really, I think, important that we have this discussion, so I appreciate the forum. You know, I've been serving on the TCC for 6 years, and, you know, functions really well. You know, we can see what Bob talked about today, you know, the grant proposals and getting all this money and doing really great work, and I'm proud to be a member of CRTPO. And I think for me personally, I wanted to be a part of this item because I want to make sure that the CRTPO, what I perceive, what I need to do from my mayor every month is inform him and give him direction. He's on the board, on the technical coordinating committee. That's my job. I come here, I take notes, I get information, and we have a discussion about emerging issues and other things. And then he goes to the board and they do what they do and they, you know, make their decisions, right? We are the recommending body. So I went back to the bylaws and I'm like, okay, what am I missing here? And I refreshed myself on the bylaws of our organization. And the first thing that we do so well is we do the typical 3 C's of transportation planning, right? That first bylaw, we're talking about continuing cooperative comprehensive transportation planning. We do it well, we do it every month, and that's something we should all be proud of. You know, that second piece, you know, trying to prepare and make recommendations for CRTPO board. It's something that we all do and take seriously every month. We have this redundant process, right? We go to a meeting, we talk about the information, and then the next scheduled meeting to talk about it, we take action, or typically in that fashion, right? And that's pretty typical for the past 6 years, at least, of what I've experienced here on for the TCC. And again, it works well, and it's mirrored at the board meetings, right? They do the same exact process. They have their initial meeting, and of course, with I-77, there was a lot of information, so it wasn't 1 month and then the next. It took a long time, and so now they're finally ready for action, right? We've heard that September, October, they're ready for action. And for me, that third bullet that you see, to facilitate coordination and communication between policy boards and agencies is really critical, right? We've got NCDOT as our agency partner. We work with them obviously every month at the TCC, and we know offline and online, we know that's critical partners, and we need information from them. You know, I went back and rewatched the board meeting from August, and I saw Brett's presentation, and Brett Knipe, who's our division engineer. It was a great presentation, right? Lots of information, really, really interesting stuff. And I'm thinking, why didn't we see this? Like, typically we see stuff before the board so that we can answer their questions, right? That's my job. And the board, my board member in particular, asked me about a couple questions after that meeting, and I didn't have the answer. So I'm, hunching around trying to figure out who at NCDOT I can ask the questions to. And I'm thinking, why didn't we cover this at TCC? Like, this is the forum, right? This is where we're all in the room. We all get the same information, and it works well. It's always worked well. So I'm not quite sure why this project is different. It is a very, very important, obviously, transportation planning project for our region. And so at the board meeting that Brett made this presentation to, he talks about a reset. He's like, oh, level set is the word he used. He's like, oh, I'm here tonight to have a level set so everyone knows in the room what's going on. I'm thinking, oh, that's what we need. We need a level set. We need at the TCC to have this course correction, have a presentation so we all know what's going on. And so when Bjorn called me 2 weeks ago or whatever it was, and asked me about this, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I'm not sure how this fell off the radar, but I think Bjorn and I would love to see it back in the normal course of action, what we typically do, and to have it back at the TCC, to have the level set and the course correction so that we can do our job, so I can do my job for my mayor. And I think that's what we're asking for today. And we're happy to answer any questions. I know this is sort of an unusual request, but that's why we're here today.
Thank you. With that, I will open it up for discussion, questions regarding the action requested.
I have a question. It might be for CRTPO staff. Like, why was this treated differently? Like, why didn't it come to TCC?
So when we did the original findings of fact in 2022 and we passed it on to the board, a lot of the presentations that have been is more educational about how a managed lane works and the different metrics into the P3 versus that, which is stuff that this group would not intervene with. So again, when we did the findings of fact, we said we were not going to provide feedback on or a recommendation. So the meetings are recorded and we always strongly encourage everyone to watch the meetings for those presentations. But a lot of the information and decisions on our part had been made. And so a lot of those presentations are educational to bring the board, which are not transportation professionals, up to date on the process. And I feel like those questions are, a lot of the questions that they have been receiving have been more political in nature, which is not something we would review. If that makes sense.
It does. Is there any reason from your standpoint that we couldn't still get the information just because it has been a while since we've seen those presentations?
We should receive the presentations. We can watch the present, or we can receive the presentations. The presentations are recorded for the board, so those are available. We have made requests for presentations, but nothing is required.
Thank you.
I do agree with Dana that some information would be probably beneficial to this board, and we had not seen some of the presentations that were given by NCDOT, and they have been informational. I do caution extremely against this board trying to make a recommendation whether the board recommended P3 or just a traditional toll lane, because as mentioned, that kind of has been a political issue. And the technical aspect of this was to recommend managed lanes in that corridor, which has already been done. So I do caution this board against going that route of trying to make that recommendation, because I don't believe that's our place.
I would tend to agree to stay out of the politics of it. My board, like I think Dana was delivering, they look at me to be the quote expert so that they can come armed with knowledge or vote appropriately. So it would help, even though it was informational only. I mean, even if Brad or whomever got up there and cut the presentation in half for us, it would be helpful to keep us up to speed on that stuff, as well as at least alert us to, hey, we're getting a lot of feedback out there. It keeps my board from getting blindsided for the two people in Mint Hill that pay attention to these topics.
So Sean, I suspect it might fall on you if there were to be a presentation here before this body, just for information. So I've talked to Brett, you and I just talked a little bit before the meeting. Will you speak to that?
Yeah, I think if that's what everybody wants, I would, whether it be Brett or myself, it'd probably be me. This meeting usually correlates with the board meetings, and Brett's not usually even in town. But to give a presentation, kind of an overview of where we've been, where we are, and, maybe even what the next steps are going to be. Like, again, not to make a recommendation to the TAC, but just say, this is what the next steps are going to be expected of them, or what we're asking them to make a decision on, kind of thing. But I think we'd be willing to do that, whether it's myself or Brett, more than likely me, but one of us would be willing to do that.
Well, and I will just share from Charlotte's perspective. I mean, as a staff member trying to keep my elected official informed about the discussions that are going on at the board, it has been a little difficult. But I also understand that NCDOT has been working as quickly as possible through this alternatives analysis to try to get the information back to the board for consideration, since that was what they were directed to do. So I suspect it's been very difficult to find time to meet with us at the beginning of the month and then the board 3 weeks later, because I guess that the information was probably coming out days before the board meeting, which does put us all in a difficult position. But what we know based on their last discussion at the board is that NCDOT will come back and look for a vote in October, which gives us an opportunity to ask NCDOT to come to our next meeting and make a presentation and share that information with us, so we can all be equipped to help our board members take that action at that next meeting. So I'll again open the floor for any comments, questions, or discussion. And then if I may, as I looked at the agenda and I looked at the action requested and then kind of reflect on the discussion that we just had, I would like to make a friendly amendment if the makers of this action would be so willing to consider it, that we change the language a little bit and basically say we recommend that NCDOT come back to the TCC and present information about the I-77's South Managed Lanes discussions.
I'm fine with that.
I'm as well. I think what's important is that the board recognizes this discussion and that they should be relying on their moving forward, they should be relying on their TCC members to keep them informed and aware of what's coming up as opposed to getting hit cold, which I think has happened the last couple of months.
And then as the TCC chair, I'll work with CRTPO and NCDOT. If there are any further discussions, we may not be afforded the opportunity because of schedule to get presentations, but we'll push that information out in email.
Sure,
And make sure that we're
appreciate that.
doing everything that we can to help this body support the board.
Yeah, I will say, Liz, you hit it on the head. A lot of times, Brett's been a lot more involved in it than me, but I know a lot of the meetings and preparing the presentations for the TAC, they've gotten those done very last minute. So it would be tough in many cases to have presented that same presentation first to the TCC, but that doesn't mean we can't come after the fact and kind of overview of what was presented and all that.
Thank you.
All right. So with that, any further discussions or questions? All right. Then may I have, yep, go ahead.
So are we about to vote on the amended motion that you had made? Just want to make that clear.
Yes,
Okay.
I was getting ready to restate it.
Recommend that NCDOT come back to TCC.
All right. May I have a motion to recommend that the NCDOT come back to the TCC and present information on the I-77 South Managed Lanes discussions?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. And may I have a second? Thank you. Did you get all that? We did it too fast. Andrew, Aaron.
Okay.
Aaron. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And thank you for bringing that forward. I think we'll all benefit from this discussion going forward. All right, moving on to, and we have quite a few information updates. Judy is going to give us an update on the FY 2024 CRTPO Public Engagement Summary.
Yes. Good morning, and thank you for having me today. I'm Judy Deller, our Public Participation and Consultation Planner. And so each September, I come to you and give you an update of our previous fiscal year public engagement success stories is really what it is. And then I'll touch briefly on what we have going on for fiscal year 2025. Starting with our team, you guys probably know all of us. We're a baker's dozen right now, so it's a great team. I love it, and I feel like we work well with all of you too. So some of our events that we had this year, you can see on the numbers here, our social media reached over 64,000 people, over 54,000 website views, 9,000 people participating in some way, surveys, newsletters, comment periods, things like that. And we continue to attend different events and have tabling there, especially now that COVID is over, we've been able to do a lot more of that. And so most recently, we had the 2055 MTP first phase of public engagement. We did 12 different events for that, and you can see some pictures from some of those. During that 1 month period, 20 Facebook posts, 13 on X, 48,000 Facebook social media impressions, and 2,700 web page views on specifically on the 2055 MTP page. Something else that we've talked about here before is I continue to hold the quarterly communications team meetings with your communications staff from all the jurisdictions. Our next quarterly one is September 17th. So coming up in 2 weeks, and hopefully your communication staff will be able to join us. Those meetings are always 100% remote. It's 1 hour once a quarter. The increase in social media that I already mentioned. We did lots of CRTPO 101 presentations to our member jurisdictions. There were 14 of them last year. And our education sessions, we held 19 different education sessions within the fiscal year. And you can see there some work going on, a charrette that was on the Seam Trail, and some of our social posts there. Additional accomplishments is with the discretionary grants program, we awarded over $70 million to our member jurisdictions. The TIP development prioritization 7.0 is in the works, and that has been ongoing and will continue into next year in this current fiscal year. The transit providers work group kicked off within the fiscal year 2024 as well. The Seam Trail Phase 1 was completed, and the Beyond 77 alternative funding report was published. We were awarded the $5 million RAISE grant. And as we heard this morning, we just heard about the Safe Streets and Roads for All. So that'll be a highlight for our FY 2025 meeting. The Title VI and Limited English Proficiency Plan was updated, and we are currently in the public comment period for that. And we're also doing a lot better job at tracking our performance measures in the public involvement plan this year. Other things, we had the board orientation, which I feel like was really successful. It was very interactive, and I think we improved the orientation handbook this year. That's on the website if anybody wants to look at it. We also had our joint MPO roundtable with Gaston, Cleveland, Lincoln. CRTPO was represented in various state and national conferences, and we held the 4-part linking transit and land use series that we did partnering with Centralina Regional Council, and also continue to have discretionary grants program webinars to help our member jurisdictions when there's the open call for projects or applications. Continuing through this fiscal year, we continue to work on the strategic plan implementation, hoping for the Title VI and LEP adoption coming up in a month or two. We continue to work on P 7.0. I know we're going to have another public comment period and then be seeking adoption later in FY 25 for that. The Beyond 77 Coalition was approved by the board, and so that first kickoff is going to be happening this fall. We'll be kicking off the Grants Assistance Program with the website going live and more information for all of you on that as well. And of course, the continued work for the 2055 MTP. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Questions for Judy?
It's been a good year.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Jarrell on an update on the FTA Section 5307 Transit Agency Annual Reports.
Good morning. I'm Jarrell Leonard from CRTPO. So the purpose of the annual report is basically a report of annual activities of the past 12 months of our transit providers received the FTA Section 5307 funds. This is a brief agenda overview for you to see on the screen, the background, eligible activities, as well as the background related to 5307 itself and the role of CRTPO, as well as the annual reports. So the purpose of the 5307 program is for urban areas that are 50,000 or greater in population to fund any critical public transportation activities for users, including those who are senior as well as disabled persons. For transit providers within our planning area actually rely on these said funds. As of October 2021, NCDOT rolled off all the smaller providers as sub-recipients so that everyone in the planning area now considered 5307 direct recipients, and CATS is considered the designated recipient. So here are the eligible activities for 5307. Planning, engineering, design, which includes transit projects such as creating plans. Kind of one of the things that come to mind, such as like the Blue Line, as well as the CATS transit system plan, or any type of system plans at a county or city level. Capital investments such as purchasing equipment, facilities, or maintenance of said equipment and facilities meeting ADA requirements. Rolling stock is the fleet, such as bus vehicles or any type of vehicles used for public transportation. Finally, for any public transportation provider with 100 vehicles or less in their total overall fleet of assets, they are eligible for operating assistance. In July 2021, CRTPO board adopted a new formula for the 5307 program, and the transit provider group is the body which is conducted through, but the TEI program had helped assemble a MOU so that you now know what exactly is tied to this program. In the next slide, you'll see the information related to the MOU. So in the memorandum of understanding, paragraph 8 requires all 5307 requirements. Recipients must do an annual report, and that annual report has to be delivered to CRTPO no later than September 1 every year. On that front, I'm going to start the presentations to the individual providers, but I was corresponded this morning that because of a meeting conflict, I believe ICATS may not be able to be in attendance, but I was notified that in the past few minutes. So unless they come in, I was just notified that. And their information is in the slide deck. So I'm going to call up Mecklenburg County Transportation.
You. Good morning, everyone. I'm Gina Merrill, the Grant Development Administrator with Mecklenburg Transportation System for the county services for adults within our Department of Social Services. Use the mouse. Thank you. So this is just our annual report, and just want to say we've had another successful year of helping our clients and consumers maintain their independence, drive with empathy, and riding with dignity. So we provide services for both mandated and non-mandated, non-emergency trips to customers, going to a variety of appointments, primarily and the differentiation is between Medicaid and non-Medicaid appointments. We also have nutritional, employment, post-secondary and adult daycare appointment sites. And you can see these are our numbers. We serve all of Mecklenburg County. And within that, you've got about almost 200,000 individuals that qualify for our services based on either their age or whether or not they have a disability. We currently have 25 LTVs and 3 passenger vans. This is our vendor partners list that we have here is actually what we presented to our county board earlier this year. That has slightly changed for fiscal year 25. But these are the ones that we had in fiscal year 24. And you can see what our average monthly passenger trips and our average monthly vehicle revenue miles are. I wanted to add this just to kind of show. So obviously, for those that don't know, we get reimbursed for our Medicaid trips, and that made up 55.92% of our trips last year. What our 5307 funds go for, along with our designated county funds, are the non-Medicaid trips. And as you can see, that actually totals 44.08% of our trips for last year. So we utilize these funds to provide close to half of the services that we do for Mecklenburg County. We did have one STIP last year where we wanted to use our 5307 funds for $994,319. So, and we are going to have, right now we have a current balance of 6.3 million. So I will tell you that we actually underspent our ARPA and our CURSA funds last year. So we will actually be able to fund our services for fiscal year 25 with the majority of ARPA and CURSA funds. We will have to use some of our 5307 that we came to you and we had the STIP approved. We're not exactly right now, we're maneuvering to find out exactly how much it is. I don't believe we're going to be going over the 993 that we requested from you for your approval. So, and then the remaining of the funds, well, let me go to this. So
all of our funding is capital, because we serve either seniors or we serve those with disabilities. So we're under the ADA clause. So all of our funds are capital, and you can see the cost of contracting is actually the amount of funds that we pay to our third-party vendors. When we can't actually provide those services, those outside vendors are the ones that are providing services for our clients. And then, of course, preventive maintenance and safety and security. So we, right now, what our plan is we will probably submit a STIP to make sure that the 994, we did not use it in fiscal year 24. We are going to use it in fiscal year 25. Hopefully to give us a balance, we're going to kind of take the seek approval for the entire federal fiscal year 21 funds. And again, the reason why we haven't used those is because we've been able to use our ARPA and our CURSA funds. And with that being 100% match, obviously the county wants to utilize those funds first before we go to the traditional 5307 funds. And then the remainder of our funds we're planning to use for our general operations for fiscal year 26 through 28. So during the COVID crisis, we increased the amount of trips that we provided. And so we want to be able to maintain that level of service for as long as we possibly can. So that's where our, even though we do have 6.3 million out there, that is where that money will be used in the future. Are there any questions? Great. Thank you so much.
Next agency to be presenting will be Union County Transportation.
Good morning. My name is Teresa. I'm with Union County Transportation. We are, Union County Transportation is a demand response service. So our passengers call in 48 hours in advance to get a ride with us. It is open to, we changed this morning. It was open to anyone in the county who is 18 years or older and registered with our service. This morning, we have changed that where it is open to anyone who is 0 to 15, who has a parent or guardian ride with them, and anyone who is 16 and older can ride by themselves. And that's a big deal for us. This 5307 money has allowed us to open up that service. A lot of our other funding has limitations on it where you have to be 60 or over, disabled. The 5307, as long as you're going into the urban area of the county, you can ride. So we appreciate being able to open up that to a lot of our residents. Our population in the county is over 263,000. In 24, we completed 78,000 trips to unique passengers of over 1,400. We have 24 vehicles. In 24, we had 24 vehicles in our fleet. We since added 4 more vehicles, so we have 28 vehicles in our fleet now. So our trips will go up for 25, and we'll be able to service a lot more of our passengers. We have 667,000 service miles for 24 and over 44,000 hours. Now, understand what Jarrell said in the beginning, we have all just been made direct recipients of 5307. That has taken a long time to happen, getting all the documentation together, being able to submit it to DOT for their approval, to submit it to the FTA. So it has been a whirlwind. So a lot of the money that we would have applied for every year, we couldn't apply for. So now we're all sitting on years of money that we have to apply for and trying to get the education as direct recipients now to be able to do that. So last year I put in a tip. I think it was this exact meeting last year. And you guys approved it, and then it went to the state. Well, it's taken the state until yesterday to approve our STIP. So TRAMS, which is the FTA application where we can do our applications in, closed for any application. So we're going to have to wait until it opens in December to be able to apply for our FFY $21. Today, you also just had a tip from us for our FFY $22. And that will go to Carpel next Wednesday for their approval as well. So we will be able to apply for that money too when the TRAMS opens up again. We
have our federal fiscal year 23 through 24 money that is still unobligated. Obviously, because we have just done the other 2 years, that we're going to wait a little bit to get those obligated and figure out what we are going to do with that. A lot of our 50s, we have less than 100 vehicles, so we can use operating money. So we use the maximum that is allowed in what's called the 3A in operations, which pays for our trips for our passengers, it pays for other operational funds, and then we have the 74 Express too that we also partner with CATS for. Any questions? Thank you.
Next agency to present will be Charlotte Area Transportation System, CATS.
Thanks, Drill. So quickly for the CATS update, want you to know that, of course, we had also for 3-7 funds. Of course, these amounts are a little bit larger than the largest transit agency in the CRTPO region. And so we also benefit from COVID funds. Of course, that's been going down as we come out of the pandemic, and 5307 is a continuing funding source for us. We use it for a variety of, as you can see, program elements, from state of good repair, which is very important to us as our fleet. It's important to have not have too old of a fleet and make sure they're in good condition. We use it also for safety and security, as well as new equipment purchases. I mean, 5307 is traditionally a capital program, and so we're very much using that largely for our capital needs. We also have used it for debt service for vehicles and for safety security. You can see the amounts there on the page. And we have been the benefit of being a direct recipient, so we do not have so many unobligated funds. But we will anticipate some STIP amendments in the near future that would come through this board for the local process, for the local TIP, as we update coordinate our local budget as well as what's needed in the programming budgets. Any questions? Sorry, short and sweet. I was the last minute replacement for this presentation. We do expect to have CATS Finance at the board meeting or more experts. And any questions you have that I couldn't answer, I would definitely follow up with you individually for those answers.
Any questions? Okay. The next recipient who's actually outside of CRTPO area is the Rock Hill Fort Mill Transportation Study, also known as RFATS. They in lieu of doing a presentation, and they're not within our planning area nor in the state of North Carolina. They're in South Carolina, covering the Lake Wiley area along Highway 49, Buster Boy Bridge area for you all for local symbolism of knowing where it's at. They chose to send written correspondence of their usage of FY 2017 through 23 CARE as well as ARP 5307 base funds. That concludes the presentation. Are there any questions?
Any questions? All right, thank you. Our next item is the Strategic Plan Goal 5 Implementation Update. Welcome, Brian.
Good morning, TCC. My name is Brian Elgort, and I'm here to give you all the fall 2024 update on the CRTPO's efforts to implement our strategic plan, including some recommendations that I will be returning to y'all next month to ask for recommendation on. There we go. Here's a brief overview of our agenda for today. I'll start out by reviewing our focus for this year in our implementation. I will do a brief preview of some of our upcoming work before diving into some reviews of 2 of our work groups, and then wrap up with a review of the Discretionary Grant Program and Project Oversight Committee and some proposed updates there as well. So in 2024, our focus has been on Goal 5, operations, which directs staff to continuously improve our internal operations to fulfill the CRTPO's mission and vision, which are up here on the slide. We really focused on organizational efficiency improvements, as well as looking at our many committees and working groups across CRTPO staff. We participate on over 30 different committees, work groups, and task forces. Internally, sort of behind the scenes, we've done a review of our data management best practices, and we've also been preparing for phase 2 of our staffing and resources study. As a preview of some of our upcoming work, we have a lot of stuff that's going to be coming online in the next sort of 3 to 6 months. Our regional multimodal opportunities map, which Curtis Bridges and Jarrell Leonard have been working on, will be published hopefully in the fall, definitely by the end of this year. We are expecting to start the phase 2 staffing resources study in early 2025. The next committees / work groups to be evaluated will be the bike ped work group, the transit providers work group, and transportation staff meetings. And then finally, later this month or possibly into next month, we will be launching our Grants Assistance Program, or GAP, which will have a database online of various grant opportunities and offer technical assistance to our members pursuing state and federal discretionary grants. For 2025, we've already identified a few items that we want to focus on. One of those will be scope development for a CRTPO branding and communications plan. We are also coordinating with Central Lina Regional Council to develop a CRTPO member academy, which will help educate our TCC and board members. We're also working with them on a leadership institute, which will help to provide training for delegates interested in serving as chair or vice chair in the future. And finally, we plan to review the strategic plan strategies. It's been 3 years since the plan was adopted, and we just want to make sure that everything sort of matches with our current priorities and work. For our work group evaluations and updates. First one I want to talk about is our CRTPO North Carolina Turnpike Authority Liaison Group. This group was informally established in July of 2018 to primarily assist with communications coordination and messaging, as well as policy development regarding tolling scenarios and managed lane usage, and obviously to coordinate with the NCTA and NCDOT on project schedules. Currently, this group meets quarterly. It's semi-informal. For 2025, we are shifting that away from it being a closed group to a quarterly presentation and discussion at transportation staff meetings immediately preceding the TCC meetings. We believe that this will maintain our communications and coordination efforts while widening the potential audience. We want more people to hear this information and be included in the process. The NCTA and the liaison group members have been informed and have agreed with these proposed changes. Next up is the Comprehensive Transportation Plan Work Group. There's been a couple of different sort of iterations and versions of this work group. The current iterations tasks were amendment guidelines for roadway projects and then amendment guidelines for the other modes, enhancing the CTP section of the public involvement plan, and then looking at future transportation corridor and right-of-way preservation and protection. That came out of the 2019 white paper that Central Lina wrote for us. We believe that most of these tasks have been completed satisfactorily, so the CTP workgroup is being paused until it's needed again to discuss CTP 2.0 and its implementation. We anticipate that happening following the 2055 MTP's adoption, and the roster of that workgroup will be reviewed and updated ahead of it being reconvened. Next, for the bulk of this presentation, I want to talk about the Discretionary Grants Program and the Project Oversight Committee. The POC was established by the CRTPO board in September 2015 as a subcommittee of TCC members with 2 specific sort of directives: to make project selection recommendations and to monitor the implementation of projects through the Discretionary Grants Program. Then the Discretionary Grants Program Policy Guide, which I'll just be referring to as policy from here on out, was adopted by the CRTPO board in February 2019, so 4 years later. This created the process that we now use to prioritize and program funds or projects funded through the Discretionary Grants Program. And it's been revised twice in response to new federal regulations, different funding opportunities, and just evolving trends and regional priorities. As part of our review of this program and this committee, we did a lot of research. We started by interviewing several current members of the Project Oversight Committee. And this slide is sort of the key takeaways from those interviews. The biggest thing that we were told was that the policy has greatly improved the process compared to before. Little, if any, input is now needed from the POC regarding how projects are scored. Everyone said that regular project updates would be welcomed. We think that they would foster more conversations, cooperation, and awareness among member jurisdictions. And the spring shortfall call was sort of universally described as a challenge or burden for staff. This focus group of interviewed POC members also reviewed these recommendations before any presentations began. We also looked at our peer MPOs across North Carolina. Campo in Raleigh has what they call the Locally Administered Projects Program, or LAP. LAP has a steering committee that meets once annually to develop their recommended target modal investment mix and recommendations for improvements to the program. They also have a separate selection panel that meets twice annually. The selection panel is made up of exclusively MPO staff and professional staff from non-applicant agencies. And they need to develop their recommended project lists as well as to recommend the reprogramming of any unobligated funds. In Durham, DCHC have what they call regional flexible funding, which is governed by their federal funding policy. They have a few different sort of priorities I've identified up here. In their federal funding policy, though, it dictates that MPO staff is responsible for scoring their projects as well as preparing the list of recommended projects. Member agencies then present those recommended projects to their board. Their policy is also reviewed and updated sort of on the same cycle as their MTP. So I'm going to be going over 4 different recommendations that we are making for updates to the discretionary grants program. I want to remind that these are driven by strategic plan review. So we looked for opportunities for process improvements, efficiency improvements, as well as evaluating sort of the current state of the POC. All of these recommendations are to go into effect for 2025. There will be no impact on the ongoing 2024 fall call process. CRTPO staff presented these recommendations to POC on August 8th and then to transportation staff last week, and there were no objections or concerns expressed at either of those meetings. Recommendation 1 is a project oversight process improvement. Project managers representing our member jurisdictions will conduct annual presentations on their active discretionary grant program projects during CRTPO transportation staff meetings. CRTPO has developed a PowerPoint template that we will ask each jurisdiction to use. And this will only be for those jurisdictions that have an active project. If you don't have something that's ongoing, there's nothing for you to present. I will highlight that each jurisdiction with at least one active project has to make their annual presentation, or they will be ineligible for the next call for projects through the discretionary grants program. This is the schedule that we're proposing for these project status presentations. Transportation staff meetings happen weekly, Wednesday at 2 o'clock through Zoom in a meeting hosted by the CRTPO. So there's flexibility within each month for which meeting you want to present to. Again, the presentation should be given by a project manager or someone that is knowledgeable about the projects, and you can team with NCDOT as appropriate. The PowerPoints will be pretty simple. There will be a title slide, a slide where we ask you to list all your active projects. There will be 3 slides of content per project, which I'll review in a second. And then at the end, we'll ask you for a list of completed projects from the last 12 months. So here's sort of the first content slide sample. We'll ask you for your problem statement, solution, and project integration. These are all elements that are in the project applications. So no new content. This is just go and grab it and put it into this slide. The second slide, we are asking for an overview diagram of the project and then sort of a short bullet point summary of the changes or improvements being made. And then lastly, we want a project status update. So we want dates for the different phases that have either been completed or that are anticipated moving forward. And then any lessons learned, key things that you think should be shared with your fellow members. We think that this can be an excellent sort of learning process for everyone. Recommendation 2 is a planning project application process improvement. CRTPO staff leading our Regional Transportation Planning Program, or RTPP, will manage the planning project application and review process moving forward. This is to ensure that projects align with the CRTPO's plans, programming, and priorities, including adherence to relevant federal regulations. RTPP staff will lead pre-submittal meetings and review applications for planning projects moving forward. And this is to, again, encourage integration and implementation of recommendations from CRTPO plans and programming into local plans. Recommendation 3 is an efficiency improvement for the discretionary grants program. Starting next year, we are recommending the elimination of the spring shortfall call and moving forward with a single annual call for both new and shortfall project applications during the fall. Current name is the annual discretionary grants call being proposed. And it's worth noting that the current fall call process already allows for shortfall project applications. So that's not a new thing for the fall. But the main benefit we see is offering a complete pool of applications. We think that will improve the assignment of funds to modes and project phases rather than committing to spring shortfall call projects before knowing what's going to come up in the fall call. We also think that this will significantly reduce administrative burden for our member jurisdictions, partner agencies, NCDOT as well. Finally, our fourth recommendation is that the CRTPO board should dissolve the project oversight committee. Based off our interviews and feedback from POC, the policy has created a process that no longer requires a fully dedicated TCC subcommittee to administer. Transportation staff meetings and TCC will serve as forums of discussion for the discretionary grant program moving forward. The recommended project list for the annual call will be developed in TCC work sessions, which I'll go over on my next slide. And the TCC vice chair will continue to lead that process. Again, this goes into effect after the development of the recommended project list for the 2024 fall call. Nothing is affecting the current fall call process. These work sessions will be open to all TCC members, and is our hope that by eliminating steps in the process, it'll become clearer and sort of prevent confusion moving forward. So TCC work sessions will be scheduled for the same days as the regular December and January TCC meetings. They'll be scheduled for 11:30 to 1:30 or to start 20 minutes after the TCC meeting ends. And this follows sort of the linking land use and transit training series that was done earlier this year. If TCC is canceled for whatever reason, then we would start these work sessions at the normal TCC start time. And the January work session will only be if needed. So if we don't wrap things up in December, we still have a second work session, but we don't have to have it if it's not needed. All TCC members are invited and encouraged to attend and participate in this process, which again will be led by the TCC vice chair in accordance with the policy. CRTPO staff will be present during this meeting and available for support. Here is a look at the calendar for what the new annual discretionary grants call process will look like. And hopefully this slide will look fairly familiar because the only things that we are changing are those items now highlighted in orange. Everything else is staying exactly the same as the current fall call process. So in November, our applicants will present to transportation staff meetings instead of to the POC. In December and January, the TCC will develop the recommended project list rather than the POC. And then we've moved the recommended project list going to the TCC and Board for Information and Action back a month. The January meetings are sort of very hectic, frankly, to put together, especially they're very full with agendas. And we're confident that we can still meet our timelines for getting TIP amendments to NCDOT following this. So this gives us just a little bit more breathing room. Along with this, there are going to be some text updates to the policy guide. These will strictly be clerical updates to match these recommendations I've just made. No other changes are being made. So we're removing any mentions of the Project Oversight Committee. We're identifying those TCC work sessions. We're removing the spring shortfall call, and we're updating the funding timeline / schedule. For the planning project applications, the evaluation process remains unchanged. The application has been revised slightly to be reorganized and reformatted, and some of the questions have been updated. And again, RTPP staff will lead those pre-submittal meetings. So this is a summary slide of these 4 recommended updates. Again, there's the annual project status presentations, There's the updates to the planning project application process. We are recommending eliminating the spring shortfall call, as well as dissolving the project oversight committee following the development of the recommended project list for the 2024 fall call. Next steps, I will be presenting this information to the board in a couple of weeks before returning next month to ask you all to make a recommendation to the board to approve and adopt these changes. 2025, the project status presentations will begin in January. There will be no spring shortfall call. And again, just to reiterate, the current POC will continue to meet and follow the current fall call process until the recommended project list for the 2024 call is adopted, regardless of what recommendations are adopted. Happy to take any questions you might have.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Lots of great information. I just have a quick question about shortfalls, and maybe it's not a question. I talked to Jennifer about this. Shortfall for small towns is really useful because we don't have the budget like a Charlotte, and we can squeeze in some, look at our funds and 2 times a year and try to figure out if we need to ask for more depending on the project. I understand the complexities on your side for shortfall and the complexities going into the fall call about it. I guess I just want it noted that it's going to be hard on the smaller communities for our funding cycles to not have that available to us. I know it wasn't used a whole lot, but it was used.
Correct. Yeah, it's been, I think, the last couple of years, we've received 2 applications each of the last 2 years and less than 5 applications in any given year of the last 5 years for the spring shortfall call.
Do you know if it was the smaller communities? And I don't expect you to know that right off the cuff.
I do not know off the top of my head.
Yeah. Anyway, so I know that you all are doing it for good reason. It just may cause some hardships on some of the smaller communities.
Can you talk a little bit more about that work session after the TCC meeting? Like, is there going to be an agenda published ahead of time so you know whether you should be there or not, as well as just the range of items? Obviously the project submittal, but anything else that might be chewed on at those meetings?
Yeah, there will certainly be an agenda planned, and CRTPO staff will help provide some documentation for TCC members to understand how the fall call or the annual call process works, what the scores represent, and how the scores are determined. And again, CRTPO staff will be present to ask any questions during that meeting. We are saying work sessions because these will not be live streamed or recorded. They're going to be sort of just meetings for TCC and staff to support.
Yes, could you clarify the RTPP? Sorry, acronyms, but for the planning studies, basically, that what the next steps would be if board adopts this. Is it going to be for the next UPWP statewide planning research? What calls and planning development will that influence next?
Sure. So that's specifically for discretionary grant program planning applications.
So for fall call then?
Correct. And again, not for this fall call, it would be for future fall calls that those updates I think are going to affect. And it's really just sort of because we've developed this RTPP, which is for regional planning and corridor studies and those sorts of things, we just felt having those staff look over those projects would be a better process.
I had a question now. Since essentially the POC is being replaced by the TCC work session, will any applicants be requested to abstain from the voting process, making a recommendation?
So there is no voting process associated with the recommended, with developing the recommended project list. It has been a consensus process to this point. We will certainly be working on the exact protocols of what that will look like. I think that's a fair point to bring up. At the current time, the board also obviously is the one who ultimately adopts the recommended project list, and they are open to change things as they would like. And we don't ask anyone to recuse themselves from those votes. So I'm not sure that we would be asking people to step away from sort of defending their projects, essentially.
The reason I bring that up, in the past, at least as far as I can recover, when we had the POC, applicants were asked to recuse themselves from being when the projects are being recommended. I'm just making a statement.
I can't speak to that. I'm not sure about that.
I think it should be stated that POC typically does not hold an open vote, so nobody is really asked to recuse himself about anything. So I think that should be stated. POC is just there to make a recommendation and try to get a consensus. And I'll also say that this particular year in general, might have met 4 times, if that. So I believe your recommendation about the elimination of POC is probably a good one, as POC is maybe kind of outdone its purpose since the policy guide has been adopted and revised a few times.
Yeah, I wanted to just commend y'all for bringing these recommendations forward. I think it's good progress in a way for anyone who wants to participate. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Any more discussion or questions?
I have one comment, if I may. One good thing about this, you'll have a clear understanding of how much funds available in the fall, so you don't have to worry about if there's 8 million, given in the spring, then how much does that take away from the fall? So you have just one pot essentially. So that's one good thing about having it once a year.
And I think maybe to add on to that, being that the call is about 6 months later in the year, you may have a more accurate cost estimate, as Aaron can attest that 6 months can make all the difference in the world.
All right, any more discussion or questions? Thank you, Brian.
Thank you very much.
Okay, our next item, we're going to hear from James on the Waxhaw Parkway CTP amendments.
Well, good morning, everyone. James Kelly, Traffic and Transportation Engineer with the town of Waxhaw. Today, we're going to be, just for informational purposes today at TCC, talking about the proposed Waxhaw Parkway CTP, or Comprehensive Transportation Plan amendments. And just as a friendly reminder, the Comprehensive Transportation Plan is required for all parts of North Carolina by general statute, and it is governed by the CRTPO Policy Board, as they are the designated MPO for the region. Any amendments and updates are then approved by CRTPO's Policy Board and the North Carolina Department of Transportation. Really, the whole point of the CTP is to assess the condition of the entire transportation network, and it represents the status or completeness of the comprehensive transportation system that may be required to support anticipated growth and development. So diving right into the why we are here today, a revised alignment for the Waxhaw Parkway was identified from a NCDOT feasibility study, and that revised alignment requires updating CRTPO's CTP highway map. So I'll direct your attention over to the figure to the right. As you can see, this is a simplified version of a concept that was identified from the feasibility study. In red is the jurisdiction of Mineral Springs, in white is unincorporated Union County, and in green represents town of Waxhaw's municipal limits as well as owned properties. So this really is the area that has been of much discussion over the past several months and years, is this multi-jurisdictional area. And our goal is really to minimize the impact to property owners while continuing to maximize the traffic pull away from the downtown Waxhaw core. This CRTPO CTP proposed amendment is based on concept A2 B3.1 from the 2022 NCDOT feasibility study, and majority public support was achieved for this proposed amendment through the CRTPO CTP procedural amendment process. So as we move throughout this presentation, just keep this one question in mind, because I will end where I began. And knowing that this is a regional issue that must be addressed through the procedural amendment process, to put it quite simply, is the proposed blue line, the proposed CTP line, better than the existing red line? As that red line is represented in the figure to the right, dashed, and you can see the corresponding red numbers to go along with that. There's well over 14 plus properties with the existing line, and with the proposed blue line, we're minimizing that down to 3 impacted properties. Just to touch on briefly why the Waxhaw Parkway Road extension is important. Number one, as engineers and transportation planners, our responsibility is to ensure the health and safety of the public welfare. And the Waxhaw Parkway Road extension would provide an opportunity to have a grade separated crossing. Right now, one of the key challenges in downtown Waxhaw is that we have not a grade separated railroad crossing. And we have multiple recorded incidences of large freight vehicles, semi-trailers getting stuck on the tracks, even after CSX has reprofiled that intersection. And that is a huge safety risk and liability. In addition, we also, with those train and railroad impacts, we have seen increased emergency response times, and the Waxhaw Parkway Road extension would help to improve those emergency response times. Furthermore, this really is a transportation solution, a viable transportation solution to address both local and regional traffic demands. And I've underscored the word regional because Waxhaw conducted an origin destination study last year and found that nearly 2/3 of the traffic that is in around Waxhaw is regional traffic. It is non-local to Waxhaw. So predominantly these trips are coming and going to and from Charlotte, Monroe, and we found also a large percentage of those trips are going to and from South Carolina as well. In addition, we want to preserve Waxhaw's downtown historical nature and properties and help to enhance the economic generation and vitality of Waxhaw along planned corridors, as this corridor is identified within the 2040 Comprehensive Waxhaw Plan, as well as the 2050 Union County Comprehensive Plan as an economic center and/or employment corridor. In addition, the Waxhaw Parkway would also help to advance and provide an integrated multimodal accommodation, bicycle, pedestrian, et cetera, facilities that would help support both Waxhaw and our region. Looking at this from a historical perspective, this has been on the book since 1992. So it's been well over 30 years of consideration on the Comprehensive Transportation Plan. And as we've seen over the course of time and history, that this corridor has changed multiple times. And the general trend has been shifting closer to Waxhaw, shifting more west, while decreasing overall property impacts. Looking specifically at the proposed northeast and southeast amendments, that orange line going through Snow White Road is the existing line. The purple line, it represents the Northeast Amendment. And this is based on a 2022 NCDOT feasibility study that identified the infrastructure need, and the purpose would be to alleviate congestion and improve regional mobility. And that is documented within the 2022 feasibility study. In addition, touching back on the 2023 Origin Destination Study that Waxhaw conducted, we found that 2/3 of the traffic, again, is regional traffic. Therefore, this Southeast Amendment, or the green line, is based on this 2023 Origin Destination Study that also identified a predominant north-south movement to accommodate for this regional traffic, and put together with the Northeast and Southeast Amendments. The results from the OD study indicated that a projected 8,000 vehicle trips per day would be mitigated with these improvements just at the intersection of 16 and 75. And that's why this is really vital to alleviating the regional choke point at that 75 and 16 intersection. Going back to public comment, so Union County initiated this process and initiated the public engagement that took place last year from July 2023 through August 2023. I will note that that followed the standard CRTPO public involvement process, and we received over 400 plus responses to this survey that we also had via MetroQuest. In addition to that, we had 50 plus attendees at the community meeting that we held, and we received multiple letters of support for the project from our Waxhaw Chief of Police, our Waxhaw Fire Chief, as well as from our Downtown Waxhaw Business Association. Key takeaways from this public comment was that majority public support for the proposed CTP amendments for both Northeast and Southeast was achieved. I will note there was split public feedback from people directly impacted, and that is to be expected. In your agenda packets is a memo outlining the Waxhaw Parkway Public Engagement Summary that provides a full breakdown of those public comment results. Additionally, throughout this process, since it has been a lengthy process and much discussion has been had, Waxaw also conducted an additional public comment, and this was on our master transportation plan. This also followed CRTPO's standard public involvement process, and we received over 600 plus responses to this public survey via MetroQuest. And the key findings within that additional public comment was that we had overwhelming support for the Waxhaw Parkway East Road Extension project. And really this project ranked as Waxhaw's highest unfunded project priority based upon weighted score and public comment. Here's the overall CTP procedural amendment process to date from a high level. So again, this process was initiated by Union County back in April 2023. And here we are at this point in time. September 2023, there was much discussion that had taken place from the municipalities of Union County and the town of Mineral Springs. And we addressed those public comments, those publicly expressed concerns through additional study, which I'll dive in here momentarily. And just as a brief note, Waxhaw is continuing Union County's initiated CTP amendment to finalize this process. So to ensure that we are genuinely considering other alternatives in a manner of good faith, Waxhaw realizes that simply removing the Waxhaw Parkway from the CTP is not a viable transportation solution. So in response to Union County and Mineral Springs' publicly expressed concerns that there are alternatives more favorable than the proposed feasibility alignment, Waxhaw conducted an additional analysis and we developed alternatives for 9 new conceptual roadway layouts were created based upon various matrices, which included right-of-way impacts, historical district impacts, congestion, traffic improvements, FEMA, proposed bridges and railroad impacts as well. I will note that this is in addition to the 12 previously considered conceptual alternatives from the 2022 feasibility study. And the feasibility alignment, that concept 8.2 plus B3.1 from the feasibility study remains as being considered the most optimal in minimizing impacts while maximizing our traffic flow away from 16 and 75. So to summarize what we've talked about, Waxhaw has looked at approximately 20 plus conceptual alternatives since 1992, with a majority public support achieved for concept 8.2 B3.1 from the 2022 NCDOT feasibility study. And I will briefly note that as documented within the feasibility study, Union County, Mineral Springs, and Waxhaw supported the project and supported this concept. So right now, this is just an informational only piece. Waxhaw definitely supports the proposed CRTPO CTP amendments for the northeast and southeast quadrants of the Waxhaw Parkway. An action to be requested as we progress throughout this and finalize this process will be that the TCC recommend that the CRTPO board adopt the proposed CTP amendments for the northeast and southeast quadrants of the Waxhaw Parkway at our next meeting in October. So I will end where I began, and I'll just leave you with this one remaining question and then turn it over to you for questions, which is knowing that this is a regional issue that must be addressed and finalized through the CRTPO CTP procedural amendment process. To put it simply, is the proposed blue line better than the existing red line?
Thank you. And with that, we'll answer any questions or discussion. Yes, go ahead.
I'll note that when this does come to a vote from the TCC, Union County will be voting against it because our board passed a resolution in the spring opposing not any alignment, but the project as a concept, which was essentially mirroring what Mineral Springs did earlier in the process. And so we're hoping to hopefully have some sort of meeting together between all the parties to figure out potential alternatives, but the current proposal we don't support.
Thank you for those comments, Bjorn, and we definitely understand your position. Just to note in response to that, if Union County does decide to vote against this, and if the CRTPO board as a whole votes against this, the existing red line will remain.
I was just curious why only some parcels were numbered, like the ones in the green are those already owned by the town or?
So that is town of Waxhaw jurisdiction. This was really to highlight the multi-jurisdictional area that has been a topic of much discussion. So just honing in on this multi-jurisdictional area, Waxhaw supports. Union County has made it clear that they do not. So really just focusing in on this multi-jurisdictional area to highlight the impacts within that particular area.
Any further discussion or questions?
Just a comment from the town of Mineral Springs. We also will not be voting in favor of the Waxhaw Parkway alignment.
As a follow-up question to Mineral Springs and Union County, what is a viable transportation solution to address this issue if you're voting against it? And what technical analysis has been done to support that claim?
I'm not sure if that's a fair question to ask at this moment. I mean, technical data on the spot. I just want to point that out that I'm not sure you're going to get a legitimate answer without going to a different platform.
And I just want for a point of clarity, and I appreciate James being a young gun and getting out there on that, but we did come to Mineral Springs and to Union County after the CRTPO's request for us all to get together and talk about this in a collaborative way. And no questions were asked of us on it. They went directly to a resolution to remove it completely from consideration in its entirety, which is really not what the amendment is for. And so to me, you know, right from a technical standpoint, and to your point, if that's not appropriate here, it's rhetorical perhaps, what changed from 2022 to make this really a not viable facility for the issues that we're trying to address, safety and congestion? Thank you.
I don't know. Y'all have advice, because earlier we were talking about the toll lanes and not being political, and so this feels political in that we have jurisdictions against each other. I wouldn't know which way to vote from a Mooresville standpoint. So some advice before next month, I think would be appreciated.
Great point, Erica, and thank you. Travis and I were just talking about that and maybe offering a future transportation staff meeting to have a little bit more discussion. So when this body is presented with and asked to take action, you all will have more context. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, anyone else? Thank you, James. Okay, next we're going to hear from Jennifer and get an update on discretionary grants program.
Good morning. So I just wanted to give you a project status update and then talk a little bit about the fall call. Currently we have 118 projects, active projects, 55 in highway and intersection, 42 bike ped, 1 transit, 7 air quality, and 13 planning studies. Some of those are carried over from the last year or two. Here's a breakdown of what phases those 118 projects are in. 13 are still in the planning study, and then 26 are in design, and I call in design before they have a PE authorization. So some projects here haven't even been programmed to start yet, so I put them in the design category. And then 27 of them have engineered authorization, 35 right away, and 17 in construction. And then I'm just going to jump right into the fall call. This year, we opened the call on August 12th. We had a webinar on how to apply for CRTPO discretionary funds. That is on our website. It was recorded, so feel free, if you're new to the process, to listen to that. So again, $33 million to program,
500, about 500,000 of carbon reduction funds are left over to program in FY 27. The majority of the funds are available in FY 28, 29. If you apply for PE right-of-way construction, we will do our best to get PE programmed earlier to get you started so that you can do the heavy lifting in the 28, 29 timeframe. So I work closely with NCDOT. I'll work with you on getting hopefully what you request. I just wanted to remind you, last year or a year ago, we updated the policy. Actually, it's more of a clarification in the policy. There is a project cap of 25% of the available funds, and that's per mode. So that was the clarification in the policy. So if you look down at highway projects, if you take 80% of the available 32.5 million of STBGDA funds, that's about 26 million. If you cap that at 25%, per request, per project, not jurisdiction, that's about a cap of 6.5 million. So I just wanted to throw that out there because we've been a little bit spoiled the last few years. We've had a fair amount of funding where the caps have been pretty high, but 6.5, just keep that in mind. So you can always make up the difference of your project cost in local funds. And then for bike ped, again, using that same methodology, 20% of the 32.5 million is about 6.5 and 25% of that is about 1.625. So again, quite a bit lower. The carbon reduction funds, we hope to program the whole 500,000. Typically on planning projects, we look at 1% of the total funding available or 500,000, and we're a little bit flexible on that, or the project oversight committee has been anyway lately. So I don't know the last time we got over 500,000, so I think we're good. And I shared this slide with the board too, so I wanted just to share it with you. Last year's awards, we had six, I should have reviewed these, 6 highway projects. The corridors had 50% local match or higher, and then the average local match on intersection projects were 32%. Last year we had 6 bike ped projects awarded, and the average match on that was about 31%. I think the year before was about 34%. So we're just getting more competitive. So just keep that in the back of your mind as you're talking with your board and others about what kind of match you want to put in. So the timeline again, we opened up the call. You need to have your pre-submittals meetings done. That's with us and NCDOT. High level, kind of casual, but we want to look at your concepts, your estimates, make sure everything is working well with NCDOT projects. What you're looking for will be reimbursed by FHWA, that type of thing. So we're here to help you on that. And then the applications would be due on the 31st at 5 p.m. The Project Oversight Committee will start reviewing the applications and scores November, December, make the recommendations to you all, and then information in January, and then we request action from you all to recommend to the board in February. And then we go on to NCDOT's board to get everything adopted. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any questions? Go ahead.
That 6.5 million cap, that's for just the initial request. Is there any, how would that work for overruns? Because I know that there's some upcoming cap for a % of the project that can be overruns, right?
Yep. So, I can't remember off the top of my head. So the starting with last year's applications or awarded projects, there is a limit on how much you can come back for a shortfall. It's like 100%, up to 100%. So the cap would build, like you were saying, it's not still capped at 25%. It would build on this award. We'll review all these. So as Brian pointed out in the workshop, the TCC workshops where we review scores next year, if y'all recommend that, then we will go over the policy so you're armed with, you know, how the POC has been operating. And so you come knowing how to look at a project, look at the funding types, how we apply funding types. It'll be very POC-ish feeling, I think. Any other questions?
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we're going to hear from Travis, and he's going to give us an update on CRTPO Complete Streets policy.
Hey everyone, Travis Johnson here with CRTPO. I'm excited to talk to you about the next two items. First, we're going to talk about the complete street policy that we're working on. And then second, we're going to go into the P7 update. So I'm going to go about a background of the policy that we've been working on, talk about the steps we've been following for the review for the draft policy, and then talk about the next steps. So complete streets, as I'm sure many of us are familiar with, is a process to approach street design that looks at all modes of transportation. So it's looking at not just the roadway, but then the sidewalks, bike lanes, public transportation. And so CRTPO is committed to ensuring all roadway users are accommodated in our planning area. So our hope with this policy is to further kind of refine our vision of what the region sees as complete streets, and also hope to encourage and empower our member jurisdictions to write a more refined complete streets policies and to kind of get into more of what you need on that local level, and to see this as like a guiding document for the region. So North Carolina Department of Transportation currently updated their last policy in 2019, and that is the policy we have been following. So when we submit projects for prioritization, those projects then must meet the standards set by NCDOT for their complete streets, for their steps. And so this would be seen as in addition to, so we started doing research in early 2024 for doing peer interviews with other other similar sized MPOs. So we talked to Metroplan Orlando, Atlanta Regional Commission, North Carolina, Campo, MARC, which is out of Kansas City, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission in San Francisco. And we also talked with Smart Growth America through a coordination with Mecklenburg County. So with that, we've created a first draft policy, which is included in your agenda packet. We took this draft policy to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Work Group on June 6th and July 11th. We brought this to a transportation staff meeting on July 31st, and we've had 2 meetings with Smart Growth America, with the last one being August 29th, which we did receive a lot of great feedback. So we do know there will be some modifications to the draft policy that you have based upon that feedback from Smart Growth America. And we're also asking for you to look at this policy and provide comments, let us know in ways we can improve it. Again, keeping in mind of the nature of an MPO and how we can promote and encourage complete streets throughout our region. So next steps for this policy is hopefully everyone has a document, they review, they provide feedback back to us. We're going to take this draft policy also to the board this month. We'll then come back to open a public comment period in October and hold a public comment period from October 17th to October 31st. And then our goal is to hopefully adopt a policy by November. So with that, I can stop and answer any questions. Still here, Travis Johnson. Here to talk about prioritization 7.0. We're going to talk about the division needs update for where we stand on the policy, talk about the scoring criteria, and then the schedule for public comment. So the P7.0 committee met on August 28th. We do have a September 9th meeting scheduled if needed, but as of this moment, I've not heard of a reason for us to meet again. And then we also can schedule additional meetings necessary, depending on if we get an email about funding changes or anything else that might necessitate us to review the list. For allocating local input points for division needs one One thing we did differently from the regional impact is we did not make a recommendation to fund cascaded regional impact projects. This is to align with Division 10 and Division 12's plan of not applying local input points to those projects. And there's also concern about confusion over reapplying local input points that we've already applied local input points to at the regional impact tier. So typically, when there is funding available, you would apply points to your regional impact. Those projects would then be ranked as scored, and then we would receive an updated list that would identify which regional impact projects would then be included in the draft STIP and TIP. So then that way we're not essentially double adding local input points. But again, as we are aware, due to the negative funding we have for both categories, we thought it was best to just skip that step. And then so the draft spreadsheets are also included in your agenda packet. So for local input points, this sets up 50% of the total score, which our half is 25 points. The other half is NCDO Division's 25 points. So when we add 100 points, we're adding 100% of 25 points. And it's the same thing for NCTOT divisions as well. And so we follow the SEI legislation for the requirements for how we allocate points. We allocate no more than 100 local points for each project. As I've stated previously, statewide points or statewide mobility projects do not cascade down. And this time also we made the recommendation to not allow the regional impact projects to cascade down. And of course, the board may deviate from the recommended list based upon public feedback that we receive once we're in the public comment period. The projects are ranked through the methodology based upon the latest adopted MTP. So we are following the 2050 MTP Horizon Year score, and then we divert back to the P7.0 score. And then for non-highway projects, we rank them based upon their P7 score, and we rank each mode gets 100 points. And then the next highest ranked non-highway project receives points. But again, those are the smallest point allocation that we have because there's also the smallest pot of money for those. So with that, we still have plans to come back for a request to open a public comment period in October. After that, we'll then come back for a recommended for local point allocation in November. And then we will submit those local input points after the board adopts or approves that list, still shooting for that January draft STIP deadline. So with that, I can answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Travis? All right, you're done.
Thank you very much.
That concludes our information reports, and now we'll move into our final section on our agenda. As always, you have Division 10 and 12 construction updates that were included in your packets. Both Anil and Sean are with us today and can answer any questions that you might have after the meeting. Just Roger. All right, Roger with transportation planning.
Hello, everyone. So I don't have too many updates today, just a reminder that the bike walk and see summit is later this month from the 22nd to the 24th. So if you would like to attend, just a reminder to register. It will be in Chapel Hill during those dates. So that's the only really reminder that I have. So thank you.
Thank you, Roger. All right, nothing from POC and Curtis. Bike and Ped Work Group report.
Just taking a quick look at our agenda for this afternoon, our work group agenda. We do have a couple of key items, one being on the SEAM advancement study. We're going to do a quick preview of that for our work group ahead of officially rolling it out next week. I also have an item on the Great Trail State plan. IMD's update to that plan is going to go over our submission for that update. Also, a quick plug for the Great Trails inaugural Great Trail State Conference next week in Winston-Salem. That's Wednesday through Friday, September 11th through 13th. I was going to say go register at the last minute if you can, but you can't because it's officially sold out. But still worth plugging because a couple of your TCC members will be joining a panel presentation with our project team and consultant team. So hopefully we'll see some of our local staff out there next week. That's all I've got. Can I answer any questions?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, turn it over to Travis for a few updates.
Thank you. First, I wanted to announce that the applications are open for participation in the new Reconnecting Communities Institute, RCI. RCI is hosting an upcoming webinar, provide a program overview, explain how to request support from RCI, and take audience questions in real time. This meeting will be scheduled for October 8th, 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. I realize now I put register here instead of putting the link so I could say that out loud. So I will send out that link after this meeting. As a special announcement, we also wanted to announce in remembrance of Scott Cole, there's a legacy scholarship fundraising walk run informational pamphlet available. These are also placed at the front table. So if you'd like more information on how you can participate in this walk run event and support the legacy of Scott Cole, please grab one. And then the final is, you would call Neil.
Yes, thank you. And now Neil, you have an update?
So following the adjournment of the TCC meeting this morning, we're going to have food available for those that have registered to attend the 2055 land use scenario planning workshop. And we just ask for you all to kind of, in an orderly way, go grab your lunch and come back the other way, because CRTPO staff and the consultants, we're going to be reconfiguring this room into a series of breakout tables. So, and we hope to restart the workshop here, let's say at 12:05. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll pause for a minute, see if anyone has any final comments, announcements, questions. And as always, thank you for your time and participation in the important work that we do in transportation planning for the region. With that, we have completed all items on our agenda and we are adjourned.